Hey, I've been on YouTube for about a year, but I've been doing Bitcoin for 10 years and I've been watching Bitcoin videos for over 10 years now. I know exactly what's helpful when you're first getting started in your stacking journey, and I've talked to hundreds and thousands of Bitcoiners, both in person and online. And the number one thing you need to know is, off the top, from nothing, is you should focus on the amount of Bitcoin you have, not just on the exchange rate to dollars. And that's what I covered in this interview with Robin. Super thankful to be on his channel and hope you are on your way to 0.21.
There are like in the early days, it was like 6.1 because of the halving rewards stuff. Like, why did you put, what's the vision for you for 0.21?
Yeah. So why owning 0.21 Bitcoin is a big deal is the best YouTube video I've ever put out. It's the first time I've ever been over 100,000 on just talking. And the reason why I put it out was because in the video, I'm talking about how like 0.21 Bitcoin is, it's a five-figure, thousands of, I live in the United States. It's what is it on the spot right now? It's like $20,000, like, right? It's like somewhere between $10,000, $15,000, which is a good amount. Like, that's a good amount of savings, great chunk of money, but not world changing, not life changing. And it also doesn't give you influence. And in this video, I kept coming back to the word influence, to where owning 0.21 Bitcoin puts you are an influential Bitcoiner, but owning $10,000 to $15,000 of fiat, like, you are not an influential person, unfortunately, like not an influential person financially in the global economy or the United States economy or anything. And so that's what I was talking about in this video. It's really interesting to think about how much Bitcoin you should own from a financial perspective and from an investment perspective. Totally. But it's also interesting to think about Bitcoin from this influence perspective, and like 0.21, because there's 21 million, just thinking this like 0.21 is just a great kind of initial handhold to really think about. And so that's why I picked that number. And yeah, apparently a lot of people connected with that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The perspective also with influence and not with wealth. I like that. I never heard that before. Just like I looked it up quickly, it is 13,300. Like, it's a really cheap actually to get now to 0.21 Bitcoin. And as you said, like this is kind of the game theory topic. Like the small nations could do that. El Salvador is kind of doing that with one Bitcoin a day. That will be, I think, a really big deal when the Bitcoin adoption is further down the line. And I mean, US maybe does it right now. They're moving coins away since Trump spoke about it. I don't know what's going on there. Then Germany sold theirs. How do you see that? Is it the same thing for you also on a nation state level? How do you see now adopting Bitcoin as an absolutely game theory advantage?
Yeah, I think it is fair on a country level to think about it too. I'm trying to do the mental math right now of owning 0.21 puts you in, I think it's the top 100 million. Yeah. So I like your question about countries. Something that's about me though is like, I always am trying to just like think about the person, like because I think Bitcoin's so far, like it goes so fast into like macroeconomics or like rich people or like governments or hedge funds. And especially with the ETFs and stuff now, like it's always just like kind of that or whatever. There's a ton of content for people to like buy $10 a day at a time of like get started DCA. And then there's all this stuff for like hedge funds and governments and like all this like stuff. And like, again, back to kind of like why I like the 0.21 is like $13,000, 0.21 Bitcoin is like, if you're just a regular, like quote unquote, middle class, just regular job, like person, 0.21 Bitcoin kicks you into like a new influence level. And now you're literally, the floor is you'll be the top 100 million people in the world. There's 7-8 billion people in the world, like 100 million, like you're now in the top. And then you can get into the whole like lost Bitcoin, or again, all because the hedge funds are stacking so much more, you're like chunking up and up. But I just remember when I started watching Bitcoin YouTube back in 2015, I love YouTube. Like I love what you do. I love talking on YouTube. I love sitting on the couch watching YouTube because that's where I learned about Bitcoin. I watched Tonebase in 2015. And so for someone right now today that's just like, got their wheels under them, stacking a little bit, like getting to 0.21 is a big deal. You don't have to think about what the hedge funds are doing or what the government's doing or what the whatever are doing, because you yourself can like own that amount and have like an influential kind of like piece of the world now.
Also involved in Bitcoin startups, is that right?
What was the last word?
You were involved in Bitcoin startups, right?
Yeah. So I've worked for Bitcoin startups since 2019, a few different ones of them. And so, yeah, like and mainly what I'm focused on now today is like, I really want to one of the reasons why I'm thankful to be at Fold is because I think a lot of Bitcoiners need to understand the guts of like fintech even more. And even like taking Bitcoin out of it for a second, the hurdles that kind of like fintechs have to go through in order to kind of quote unquote, like beat the big banks is like a really, really like interesting kind of like startup thing to go through. And I don't think always users know all of that. And so that's my, I don't know, that's just my main takeaway right now off the top of my head of like, yeah, being involved on the working for Bitcoin companies side of it for so many years.
What did you learn about Bitcoin from working in a Bitcoin fintech startup world?
Yeah. I think that main thing I learned about Bitcoin from this, I think that maybe that everyone doesn't see Bitcoin the same way. Like, I think you intuitively know this, but when you're trying to make a Bitcoin app for the mainstream, or when you're really trying to think about how other various groups of people see Bitcoin, you have to learn how to kind of talk about it in multiple different ways. And so that's kind of that's probably my main takeaway.
Really interesting. As you're also from fintech and real estate and all those things, how do you think Bitcoin could or will reshape the definition of wealth and being rich and being wealthy?
Yeah. I think that, well, first off, I think Bitcoiners can learn a lot from like kind of looking at the way that current wealthy cohorts kind of already are or like already perform. How do I think Bitcoin is going to reshape that? I think this is maybe a very like cheesy answer, but I think a lot of people talk about the middle class, talk about like the wealth of the middle class, or talk about, the like lower upper class or whatever, and just kind of how like wealth inequality is just like spreading, right? Like, I think Bitcoin actually functionally solves the problem for the middle. It actually functionally solves the problem for the middle because like the term like a rising tide lifts all boats. Like, Bitcoin actually is that, like, because of all of the things that we know about it, the fixed supply, uncorruptibility and all those things, a person can now just work a regular job and not have to be constantly a top 1% investor or a top 10% investor in order to like outperform the kind of like fiat slippage that's happening all the time. They can just do their thing, and the money not sucking will like create this floor for them. And so I think that's the number one thing that's going to kind of change. That's what's going to change in the middle. And then what's going to change at the top is it's just going to churn out who's there. It's going to churn out who's there because Bitcoin is so superior to other forms of investment and unfortunately, other forms of being wealthy, like, are tied to kind of these like insider outsider games. A lot of times, like a very high degree of kind of like who's in the top of the top comes with these insider outsider games. And so people that like enter that world through Bitcoin are now like literally a different kind of like demographic than who's there right now. And so that's how I see kind of the top changing. And I see this like actual middle class like having